Just Onside. It's Monday, a couple of days after a big, massive game, Champions League final. Obviously, OS is probably not too happy, but there was a parade yesterday. Arsenal celebrating their league victory, so at least there's some happiness around North London. But first, before we talk about the game and the fallout, how are you, OS?
Normally, when you ask me this question, are you? I bat it away with the good old platitudes about how it's Monday, started a week of work, and first day back after holiday, and all the rest of it. But I'm not doing so good, mate. I am not doing so good, to be very honest with you. But you're right; it's a couple of days removed, which is probably just as well, so we can articulate some honest thoughts. But yeah, difficult night for Arsenal Football Club. Saturday night. But yeah, other than that, are you doing good? First day in the books after an Eid break here in the UAE. So yeah, I'm looking forward to another weekend, to be honest.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I say excellent. It's probably not excellent, but maybe, hopefully, we can. This might be a cathartic experience. Trying to get it out of your system. We'll talk about the game. I enjoy it. It's a strange one because people were obviously complaining about the game quite being it being quite a dull game, but I enjoyed it because we talked about two different styles of play. Uh, I've got to be honest. I thought Arsenal, barring the penalty, got it absolutely spot on. It wasn't pretty. I mean, we talked about it. It's not going to be pretty, but in terms of tactics, it was absolutely on point. And as I said, barring the penalty, it probably would have been an Arsenal victory because it seemed very, very difficult for PSG to break them down. In fact, some of their star players, I mean, Dembele, he hardly had a kick. Apart from the penalty, he hardly had a kick. That first 45 minutes, I don't think there's any team that perhaps has nullified, negated PSG in the same way that Arsenal did. So from that point of view, Arteta's tactics were absolutely spot on. So, talk about your emotions. Talk about the game. You must have been devastated because I suppose to lose a game is bad enough. To lose on penalties, it's as bad as it gets. Sort of uh, talk about exactly how you sort of felt during the game. You must have been pretty chipper at the start because you seem to have it in complete control. That penalty equaliser obviously must have been devastating, but you sort of avail us all as to how the day sort of panned out for you, or the evening panned out for you.
Yeah, you. Thanks for that. I mean, look, first and foremost, when I speak about the difficulties of what Saturday night brought, it's only in the realm of football and sport. That's the first thing I should
Mm.
speak about because there's a lot going on in the world right now. So, a football game that Arsenal loses on a Saturday night in Budapest is our first world problems. Let's be very clear. No, look, in terms of just the setting, if I may, Ayub, yeah, I took a couple of days out in Dubai, didn't I? Yeah, last week because we had holidays. So Friday was a pretty chill day at home once we returned. Saturday, then obviously, a little bit of the nerves start to creep in, don't they? It's the biggest night that Arsenal have had in their history, in a lot of ways, or at least in recent history, for at least a couple of decades. Decades. Took the family for a nice lunch. To get a little bit distracted or what have you. And then for the first time in a long time, I actually settled down to watch a lot of the build-up. I never watch build-up for Arsenal games, but I just thought Champions League,
Mm.
I've watched it for the longest time, the finals, where, you watch the coaches arrive, the buses arrive, they follow the buses, don't they, into the stadium. I've always felt, I remember watching the Liverpool Spurs one in the Atletico Madrid, which was a new stadium at the time. I think it had only been open for a year. And I remember following the camera, the coaches, I think the parking was underground, as is often the case with a lot of these modern stadiums. And it just creates a certain aura, a certain mystique about the game. All the players then come off wearing the same stuff, normally headphones. There's just a certain dramatic feel about the coach and then the players one by one. And you put yourself, and you've spoken about this at length, haven't you, Yub, about how one of the biggest most intriguing aspects for you in terms of sport is a sportsman's mentality. You've spoken about this
Mm.
many times before, how you're super intrigued about what does it take to be at that level to perform at your best when the stakes are at their highest. How
Mm.
how how do you block some of that noise out? You've spoken very articulate or in a very eloquent way previously. And I thought about that when they were going to the dressing rooms. Imagine you're a football player. This is the biggest game you're most likely to play, at least in club career. Think about Miles Lewis Skelly in terms of the tender age. He's been told by the time he comes off the court, you're playing. So it's amazing. It really is amazing when you put it into that type of context. So I was obviously not nervous, but obviously then time starts ticking, 7 p.m. here, so that's an hour to go to kick off in terms of local time. Suddenly the players come out. I even watched the night before a full 55 1 hour worth of the open training that they do because I really wanted to take all of this in. It was my team contesting the biggest club game in club football, really, in terms of the most prestigious game. So you want to take it all in. And then obviously, as the game's coming, you're thinking, right, you've got to start well. That's the first thing. And Arsenal did start incredibly well, Ayub. A little bit of talk about handball. I mean, it's accidental. I'm not sure where the rules stand in terms of the second to last player now handballing it. His arm, Trossard, was tucked into his chest, to be fair. And Havertz then, I mean, also knows this better than anyone. He does what he does best, which is score Champions League final goals. I mean, it was a wonderful goal. In some ways, you'd expect him to cut across a little bit more with his with a few touches before that. But once he's settled on taking that from a narrow angle, let's say, he's done what any striker should do from there, go for the roof of the net. Wonderful goal. I don't know what you thought, Ayub. I thought a camera angle was always very difficult with this game. It wasn't quite a bird's eye view to the pitch like a new camp. So I couldn't grasp that it'd gone in until I saw Havertz wheeling away because the camera was a little bit distant from the touchline, if that makes sense. But it wasn't quite bird's eye to give you that kind of real quality feel. I mean, you've spoken about this where when you go to grounds, you love to just be a little bit center, a little bit high up so you can get a lot of the tactical kind of nuances of the game. So I could only tell it was a goal because Havertz wheeled away, which was a weird thing. I mean, it's not normally how you would register that your team scored a goal in the biggest game. And then you're right, Ayub. I mean, we'll speak maybe afterwards just about the Arsenal approach because there's been a fair bit of fallout, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts that you already believe that they probably adopted the right tactics given the level of opposition that they went into. And at that point, you're thinking, can this team essentially defend for about 90 minutes because they'd scored I think the fifth or sixth minute or something along those lines? Can they defend for another 90 minutes and see this out? And they have done previously. So there's a lot resting. There's a lot of, I guess, equity for Arsenal to lean on there. I mean, the only game this season that they've lost by 2 clear goals is the Man City game in the Carabao Cup. So even the games they lose, they are by the odd goal. It's not, they've not taken any thrashings or beatings. I mean, they're a proper team, so they're unlikely to take too many thrashings anyway. But it just goes to show that Arsenal just felt they are very comfortable with the uncomfortable in a lot of ways. They know how to double up in terms of on the wings. You saw that really to an absolute T in the first half, where they restricted PSG to a lot of pot shots and slightly desperate actions on a number of occasions. Now, I text my friend at halftime in terms of potential substitutions, and I text him one line, which I always worry about in a game of the highest stakes. And I always say that when you're going up against the very best, which Arsenal were, the best force you into errors because 90 minutes is just a long time. If they keep probing and pushing and forcing the issue, there's a certain mental kind of anxiety that often persists in games of this magnitude. You saw with the Mosquera yellow card given quite early on for wasting time in the 46th minute, I think it was. And I remember thinking at the time, if I'm Mosquera, who's been brought in, obviously Timber wasn't quite ready to start, and I'm okay with that decision. I think when you've not played for 2.5 months, I think the manager gets to take that call. I mean, he sees him up close and personal. But on that particular moment, as soon as he got a yellow card, I was thinking from a defender's perspective, Ayub, he's thinking this ball is going to find its way to Kvaratskhelia like all the time now because they are going to play for this additional yellow card over and over again. I mean, it's the smart thing too. You get the ball over there and say to him, dribble him, and he's one of the world's best players. And I just wondered at that moment where, and I don't blame him for this, but whether Arteta could have been super proactive. The moment he got the yellow card, say substitution, we're bringing on Timber. Maybe he felt it was a bit too early, knowing that the game could go into extra time, whether Timber had the best part of 75 minutes in him, because that's what it would have taken at that point, 74, 75 minutes. Maybe he just didn't feel quite comfortable to take that call. But that would have been the most courageous, aggressive move to say, I'm going to put a fresh defender on so that Mosquera doesn't have to worry about this potential second yellow card. And I text my friend at halftime saying, I feel like a momentary lapse, a desperate lunge, something could be our undoing, because Arsenal are so comfortable defending, but PSG were always going to start pouring it on, getting plenty of men around the box. And that's exactly what happened, Ayub. And it happens often, is the case when world-class players, quick 1-2s, they force the issue. I mean, he wasn't going to score from there. If you watch closely, Saliba's narrowing the angle very quickly. So he's done what any good centre-back should do, which is read the danger. But when you're facing a bit of mental anxiety in the most high pressurized moments, that's what happens, isn't it? I mean, I remember famously, I think you might do as well, was it Phil Neville against Romania, famously in the Euros? Was it Euro 2000?
Yeah,
I can't remember. But it's those desperate things you do when things are looking a little bit, worrying. I mean, we saw something later on, which I guess we can touch on a little bit, but the Mendes challenge on Madueke could have gone either way, by the way. But it still felt desperate from the defender, just because that's what happens, a bit of anxiety and all the rest of it. So, yeah, listen, when they make it 1-1 and then PSG started to really pour it on, I don't know if you noticed that, but in certain moments of the game, then Arsenal at times were going for it and leaving themselves exposed. They brought on some really good substitutions with Barcola, Emery, and they ran through a few times where Arsenal had to produce some last-ditch challenges from Lewis Skelly to defend onto the post from Kvaratskhelia. Barcola, where Raya really had to just take a gamble and collect the ball. But then you get to extra time and you're thinking, right, we've got another half an hour. He's made, I thought, the right substitutions in the end. I thought he had to, unfortunately, move on from Havertz, get some fresh legs on Eze, all the rest of it. I wasn't happy in the end that we had to finish a final with Madueke and Martinelli on the wings. But, I mean, it is what it is. It's a long game. It's a high pressurized game. And yet, as extra time is persisting, you're just desperate. It didn't feel as though Arsenal had a goal in them. So you're just hoping to God that obviously you can get it to penalties. And penalties they did. And they probably, in the end, I thought, at least on the basis of extra time, probably deserved to take it to penalties. I didn't think PSG really went for it too much as well. They were a bit cautious. And then penalties. Now, I was watching the game with my son, who rarely watches Arsenal games with me, but he watched this one, which was quite nice, a wonderful experience. He was obviously supporting Arsenal as well for this particular game. He's a Liverpool fan. And then as it went to penalties, I told my wife and my daughter, who are not interested in football, let's be very clear, but they knew it was a big night for Arsenal. I told them, listen, it's penalties. You can come and watch if you want, because I know you do. I know, following England as they do, as many kind of women do in our culture and households, when it comes to England and penalties, they're like, oh, we'll watch a penalty shootout. Why not? So we watched the penalty shootout as a family, which was quite nice. Just on a personal level, I thought it was quite a nice, intimate moment for the family. And yeah, penalty shootout. What can you say? You're already accepting that this could be a devastating way to win. There's 10% of you that thinks, yeah, but it could be the most incredible 5 minutes as well, in terms of this could be, this could be bonkers if this goes the right way in terms of emotion, euphoria, all the rest of it. Probably the best day of my Arsenal sporting life could be realised in 5 minutes. Those are the sudden emotions that come to boot. But you and I are pessimistic souls at best. You perhaps more than even me. You're always thinking the worst, aren't you? It is our lot in life, I guess, in some ways. And then it's a huge miss. We can think about the technical aspects of it. I'm not a huge fan of stutter step run-ups. I'm a fan of the Jorginho run-up because he runs and then pauses, which can normally offset or unsettle the goalkeeper's rhythm. I think when you stutter step, the goalkeeper gets a beat on your run-up, because you're not moving. You saw it famously with Rashford in the Euros against Italy, I believe it was. If you do a stutter run-up, the goalkeeper doesn't have to. You saw Raya, for example, with the second to last penalty where he dived too early. And that happens because for the players running fast, it forces the goalkeeper at times just to get his timing wrong because he has to commit quickly. So I'm not a huge fan technically of that stutter because I think goalkeepers can essentially stand still and force you to try and get it too far into the corner. Shame for him. I feel sorry for any guy who misses a penalty at the highest level. I don't believe in that nonsense of it's 12 yards. I mean, Richard Keys was very difficult to bear, to be honest, all night because you got to remember Bain Sports is a Qatari subsidiary and what have you, so he was supporting PSG. But I mean, his commentary all day was very difficult. This is only 12 yards. I mean, it's a big net. I mean, this is just devoid of any real commentary or analysis or what have you. I mean, the stakes, I mean, come on. There's a reason why your Zubimendi's and your Madueke's and others didn't step up or Timbers because it's a big moment. And if you're not feeling good for it, you don't go for it. Then you get the save from Mendes, from David Raya, who was incredible. And then, yeah, you saw the remaining penalties. And when Gabriel stood up for the fifth penalty, I felt as though he was going to miss. It's not that he's a centre back. I don't think that's got anything to do with it. I would have liked that to have been a more cultured player, like a Zubimendi or somebody who's used to putting through 10-yard passes, 12-yard passes, 15-yard passes. Gabriel's used to putting the ball in the air. And that's exactly what he did. I don't mean he can't score a goal. I mean, Arteta alluded that he's a good penalty taker. And listen, I think at that moment, you're asking guys who you want to take. Arteta spoke about it. He didn't have his natural penalty takers on. That's not him to blame. This is how 120 minutes develop over a Champions League final. You're probably not going to end up with your penalty takers on the pitch. Some of these guys are very good penalty takers in practice. And it's a moment where you say, right, is everybody comfortable taking one and who wants to go first, second, third? And if your captain or Gabriel says, I want to take the fifth one, you're not going to say no, are you? Just if you're feeling good, you go for it. I think it's patronizing to say that to a footballer at this ilk to say, well, we don't think you should take it. I don't think that's the way it's done nowadays. So look, he's missed a wonderful moment, I thought, from Marquinhos, fellow Brazilian compatriot. It reminded me a little bit of what I particularly love about football. I won't mention who, but I got a pretty ugly text from a Man United supporter after the game. I let it be. I didn't respond. But I then think back on the other side in terms of what I love about sports. We've spoken about it many times, Ayub. Sport is professional sports, is elite level competition at its finest with all of the storylines, all of the drama, all of the twists. It's why they televise it to millions and millions and millions around the world. But at its core, it's competition between compatriots where, similar to what we speak about in cricket, Shane Warne used to talk about it all the time. After the game, you go into the dressing room, you say, well played, mate. That 100 was amazing, or that 5-wicket haul was amazing. You drink a beer, at least in the cricketing kind of what have you. And I thought it encapsulated that in a wonderful moment, that there's this sport, you're fighting for 120 plus minutes, but there is room for empathy. Of course, they're compatriots at Brazil, but I thought it was just a very beautiful moment. I really appreciated that in terms of what sport should be all about. And then, yeah, for me, devastation in terms of, again, from a sporting perspective, you're just left with this feeling. And I'm not one of those, and I'll probably end it here for the first stanza, you. I'm not one of those. When it comes to the league, it's 38 games. There'll be peaks, there'll be troughs. Wins, draws, losses. I was never wavering for the last 3 or 4 years as though Arsenal were going to fall off a map. I kept saying, if they keep doing the right things, you don't go away. You don't suddenly stop learning how to defend. You don't suddenly stop learning how to run. This is the hardest working team. This is the best defensive team. They didn't lose in Europe this year. Let's be very clear. They finished the season unbeaten. I mean, you can say penalties, fine, but they didn't lose in regulation time, which I think is something to mention. 7 goals conceded in the competition, yet they didn't come away with the trophy. But I think in the league, you have 38 games, peaks and troughs. The best team normally wins. There's no real jeopardy other than if you put your best foot forward more times than not, you'll win the league. That's how it's designed. In the Champions League, I don't feel like that. You can be the best team, but over 2 legs in a knockout game, a deflection, a red card, a poor decision, an inopportune injury can wreck your chances of competing for that title. So on the Champions League, I would not say with any great conviction that Arsenal will be back at this moment anytime soon. I think it's too difficult to get to this point. They had a very fortuitous, albeit deserved draw, because they were top of the group. So top of the group normally means you're going to get some decent path. But they were favourites in the last 16. They were favourites in the quarters. They were favourites in the semi-finals. So I guess, the favourite won out. But to get back to the Champions League final, for me, is not guaranteed. It's not something I take for granted. It was a great honour to be part of that game, because I haven't been part of that game for 22 years. I've watched every single Champions League final. Some of them not even thinking Arsenal could even dream of getting to it. It's not even. I mean, I guess it's the same in a sense for you. You're not going to see Leeds most likely. Oh, you're going to say, "Don't you dare!" But they're not going to win the. They're not going to win. They are not going to win the Premier League. I mean, it's just. This is the thing that you did from an Arsenal perspective. Yes, are they good enough to win it? I think so. I think most people would accept that, but it's absolutely not guaranteed. How long do you know that you're going to have this manager for? How long do you know that you're going to have this group of set players? I mean, I absolutely will not say with any great deal of conviction that they'll be here again, which is why it feels so poignant, or it feels so such an opportunity missed. So yeah, horrible defeat. I won't lie to you. I've not felt like that for quite some time. Penalties is a rough way to lose. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd rather lose like that than lose 5-0. I don't care what anyone says, because you're right there. You're not being taken apart. You were right there. But yeah, ultimately, second place, runners up. Tough for the group. Obviously, had the parade the very day after, or even the morning after, which I guess is difficult to navigate from a. I think they put a bit of a show face on and smiling and all the rest of it. And so be it. One last comment, you just from my side. You saw the Gabriel emotion with Marquinhos. I don't know if you caught it, but even David Raya on the side, I don't know if you saw it, just ahead of Gabriel, was in absolute tears on the floor. Now, some might say this is sport, get over it. But I love to see emotion from my players. It should matter. They do care. They want to win. And he was he could not be comforted in any way. I mean, Martinelli was trying to get him up. Marino was trying to get him up. He finally took Kepa to lift him up. I love that. I love that about my football team, that they do care. There's emotion there. There's a real sadness there. You saw Arteta; he was absolutely gutted, and that's how it should be. If it's worth winning, you should be gutted when you come up short. So yeah, onwards and upwards. They've got to somehow use that as fuel and hope that they can keep putting forward the consistency that they have this season to give themselves a chance in the next 2, maybe 3 years, to see if they can get into those final knockings, final 8, final 4, and with a bit of luck, grace that occasion again, and hopefully go one better. But again, that's not guaranteed for me.
That's well summarised from an Arsenal fan's perspective. I mean, I'm not neutral. I mean, my allegiances were with PSG, but just on the game itself, Arteta. The problem for Arteta is the style that he's going to play. He has to win, because you know what's going to happen. If you don't win, there's going to be a lot of criticism. Because if he had won the game, it still would have obviously sort of extracted some criticism, but the means sort of justify the ends, or the ends justify the means. So there's a lot of pressure that he's obviously putting upon himself to play that style. Now, I think he obviously thought that that's the most effective way to play against PSG, which I think for large portions of the game it was. But we talked about it. This wasn't something new. This wasn't something that should have been a surprise. We would have expected it. I mean, from a defensive point of view, it was a masterclass, I thought, for large portions of the game. I mean, in terms of sort of the attacking players helping out as well. I mean, in terms of sort of doubling up. I mean, I thought Saka was magnificent defensively. But the problem therein is you've got to win the game playing that way. And the fact they didn't. I mean, it was a great achievement to get it to penalties, because in a sense that probably would have been their best opportunity. But I still, if I was an Arsenal supporter, there should be still a degree of frustration, because you've almost accepted that they're the better side, which technically they probably are, man for man, in terms of the skill set. But you don't win the Premier League by being an ordinary side. This is a damn good side. You've got some damn good players. It should have been. I just thought he was far too conservative, as he has been sort of for many of the years that he's been in charge. And I think all the criticism that he's getting now is deserved because he didn't win the game. He had a strategy, uh, and if it didn't work, then all the criticism is fully deserved. And I think that's really what's happened now. That a lot of neutrals wanted PSG to win because, in a sense, you almost want to make sure that you don't, if you've got an approach which is defensive, which is negative, in a sense, you don't want that to be the modus operandi for other teams going forward. So I think the best football team won. Football won in the end, but I will give tremendous amount of credit to Arteta because that is a very difficult side to play against. There's a lot of quality. I mean, Dembele was completely anonymous. I mean, apart from that penalty, he didn't really have a kick in the game. Uh, I thought the organisation of Arsenal was outstanding, considering they played 60 odd games already, and a lot of those games have been very competitive. Unlike PSG, who've obviously had lots of games where perhaps they've been able to rest players, but it was a great watch. I enjoyed the game, I must confess, because I love the contrasting styles. Uh, I mean, in the penalty shootout, I mean, to be honest, I mean that PSG keeper, I don't know how good he is. But he seemed one of the worst keepers I've seen, uh, and I think just getting on target, it would have gone in. So to talk about the penalties, I think, I mean, I felt for Gabriel, but it's that's penalties. I mean, if you get to that stage, it is a lottery. Uh, you talked about Eze, all that sort of stopping, starting. I mean, he struck the penalty quite well, but he put it wide. But he struck it quite well. Now, obviously, he's rehearsed that many, many times. That's not something he just decided on doing on that particular occasion. It's as long as he was committed, which I think he was in terms of when he struck the ball. It wasn't a scoff. It just on that day it
It,
was bad luck. He didn't get it. He was trying to obviously go for the corner, which I want players to do. I mean, unless you're so good where you can send the keeper the wrong way and you're still in control, knowing the keeper's gone that way, then you can sort of slide it in. But he obviously sort of thought, irrespective of which way the keeper goes, I'm going to put it in the corner. Uh, it's his style. It didn't work on that day. So overall, I mean, I thought it was an enjoyable game. Just on that goal that Havertz scored, you were right about the camera. I thought the camera angle was completely wrong. I mean, when I was looking at it at the start, I'm thinking this camera's too far away. Uh, and I was exactly the same as well. When he scored, it took maybe about a half a second just to realise that he scored because the camera angle really didn't sort of
yeah.
make it quite easy. But just on the overall game, I thought it was a good game to watch from a from a from somebody who loves the game because it was nice to see contrasting styles. I think it was perhaps right that PSG won because they were the team that perhaps was more inclined to be on the front foot. But I think Arteta needs to really ask a question about, is this always going to be the way that he's going to play? Because he's got the talent, he's got the players. Now, obviously, as a defensive unit, there is no better. There is absolutely no better. And the fact they were celebrating corners as well, which I think it rankled with a few people because it's this is it's almost it's a homage to Tony Pulis and Big Sam because if this is the modern game Arsenal are trying to play, then sort of sort of turn the clock back 20 years. Big Sam was doing this 20 years ago, so I don't like that. That I didn't like. Do you know, the celebrating the corners and the set plays because in a sense you're almost saying, well, this is how we play. It's a very sort of archaic way of playing, but. Good game, enjoyable, and for a sort of neutral, the drama of the penalties is absolutely magnificent. Right. We'll go on to some of the talking points because there has been a little bit of
yeah.
fallout. I think the approach. I've obviously sort of said it's fine because it's a way that you want to try and sort of give yourself the best chance of winning the game. But the problem is if you don't win, it will leave yourself open. So, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's justified criticism? I mean, I think Marco van Basten, the Dutch legend, I think called Arteta a coward. Now, I don't know whether that's been sort of lost in translation, but he's been quite brutal, and there's been others as well who have obviously been quite critical of Arteta's approach. So, as an Arsenal fan, what do you make of all of that?
Probably difficult to lose in translation. Coward. I mean, I'm not sure. There's not much room for maneuver there, is there? Yeah, listen, there has been a lot of fallout with regards to the approach. Listen, this is my take. It's a subjective take. You try and be balanced with your view, but this is how I feel. Um, the fans watching the game of football, unless you're Paris Saint-Germain fan or an Arsenal fan, which obviously I was, um, there's no divine right to entertain anybody else. If you want to tune in for the game, yes, it's the showpiece, it's the Champions League final, but there's no divine right to suggest that actually we need to see a wonderful game of football. The fact is, and I can tell you this because I saw it even within the game, if Arsenal played an open style, this game would have been done by 60 minutes. It would have been done by 60 minutes. And I think Arsenal know that. That's okay. That's not defeatist. That's a realist. I mean, everybody, even you spoke about it. Jamie Carragher spoke about it. The only way that Arsenal could live with this particular PSG team, the one that scored 5 goals against Bayern Munich in that first leg, incredible game, all the rest of it, the best attacking team in Europe that we all accept, and you can pay homage to that and say, that's fine, you accept that. You have to have some level of pragmatism going into the game. The only way we're going to be able to beat this team is to play within the margins of the game. If you open it up and you give these guys, these footballers, the ability to thrive in chaos, in space, 60 minutes. Maybe that's too many. I think they could have just blown us away. Even those few occasions in the game where you saw it when Arsenal slightly committed, for me, too many men forward. I think Timber's second half, there were times when he was rushing forward. They were taking some pot shots. Suddenly, one long ball, Barcola's picking up the ball, running at Saliba. And I'm thinking, goodness gracious, how can it be this late in the game when you're 2-on-2, 3-on-3 at the back? You have got to be more cautious than this. I think you'd only understand that if you've got, for me, a dog in the race. And I had a dog in the race. And I know how I want my team to play in a final. Be relatively pragmatic. You can lose a game before having the platform to win a game. That's how I've always approached my football in terms of playing and in terms of watching. Would we all love to be supporting a team that goes out and slaps every team 3-0, 4-0? Amazing, wonderful. But it's never been possible, not on a consistent basis, unless you've got one of the all-time great players in, let's say, a Messi or it doesn't happen. Arsenal's best attribute is that they work damn hard for one another. And that's what they leaned on. They said safety in numbers. We're going to make it difficult for this team. And in the first half, PSG had pretty much next to nothing. David Raya didn't have to pull off one save. His biggest contribution in the entire game, other than the Nuno Mendes penalty save, was coming out and that judgment call when he came out against Barcola and selected the ball. He didn't have a save to make. That's because Arsenal are an incredibly good defensive team. They've conceded 7 goals in the Champions League. This goalkeeper won his 3rd Golden Glove in terms of Premier League, in terms of the most clean sheets. It's not even close in terms of who the second best defensive team is. I mean, they're in a space in and of themselves, and that's only because they work damn hard for one another. And every successor that Arsenal have had this season and moving forward will always be underpinned in terms of its biggest contributing factor by how hard they work. I watched Liverpool all season long. They don't work hard enough. Arsenal work, they run their socks off. Mikel Arteta does not allow anybody to get away with just cheating a little bit when they press in, or I'll just cheat a bit forward. Eze messed up one time against Matty Cash. He didn't play for about 10 games. This is, and it has to be that way. These are the highest standards. Before you can win a game, you've got to make sure you don't lose a game. If you told Arsenal before the game, PSG, well, you're going to play 120 minutes and PSG is going to score 1 goal, you'd be thinking, I think we can get a goal. Somewhere, somehow, we'll get a goal. If you told Arsenal before the game, it's going to go to penalties, yeah, probably take it, because we were the inferior team. The bookies told you that. Anybody who spoke from a footballing knowledge told you PSG are probably the better team. And that's okay. Even I accept that they are the better team. The approach that they took was the only approach that they could take, given this current Arsenal team, which for me is still challenged from a forward attacking sense. Now, I have the utmost confidence that he's going to do what it takes to address that in the summer. He spoke about it after the game. What did he say? It's going to take us to be super ambitious. We're going to have to be very smart, very quick. He's putting the pressure on. He's about to get a really big, fat, juicy contract, which he should do. But that doesn't come across as a manager who's happy to see, oh, could we then see if we can steal another one next season? No, he wants to go again. Now, this Arsenal team, their biggest strength was in defence. And the only thing I would say is, without wishing to sound stupid, is that they didn't lose the game. Now, I hear your
Mm,
point when you
mm,
say, and I do hear you when you say the end has to justify the means. And I get that. In the end, if you're going to play within the margins so much, you're occasionally going to fall on the wrong side of those margins. I think it's something he's accepted that, yes. But again, he would argue, I didn't lose the game. It came down to penalties. It's something I used to think about even last season when PSG beat Liverpool at penalties on Anfield. I always say Liverpool won the first game, PSG won the second game. I mean, technically it was a draw, and then you've got to have this lottery of penalties. Now you might say, well, how else are you going to decide who wins the game? Of course, in the end, Arsenal lost, but they took it as far as they could take, and in the end, you're left to the lottery of penalties. I'm not sure. Again, the only I think regret he will have is perhaps not being super ultra aggressive with that substitution of Mosquera the moment he got a yellow card. I think that's the one decision he'll look at and say, could I have been a little bit more forceful to try and get Timber on? Now, it was early doors. Timber, I'm not sure he had that many minutes in him. So maybe I think that's the only call, because I think Arteta's a smart cookie. Look, he's smarter than I am. He'd have seen that to say, if my right back gets a booking this early, that ball's going to end up there time and time and time again. And if they start moving the ball quickly around him, that could lead to some problems. Even if they don't move it around him, he's going to be scared to put a challenge in just because. And listen, he could have got a second yellow. I'll be very clear.
mm.
That could have
Yeah,
easily have been given a
yeah, yeah.
second yellow. Now, I don't think Arsenal were lucky or unlucky. I've just said he could have been given one because it's a foul, it's a penalty. Now, some argue penalties probably damage enough, and referees probably trying to keep things a little bit, and that's fair enough. I think you could see it both ways. That it wasn't as though Kvaratskhelia was through on goal. It just a clumsy challenge. That's all it was. But yeah, I think just from the approach perspective, I got a few texts from people who said, "Well, could he have changed his method?" And I said, I don't think. I think he just has supreme confidence in this team's ability to defend, and they've given him that faith that they can defend this league. They've done it time and time and time and time again. And I think the only bit I would disagree with you is I think it's too simplistic just to say, well, then you've got to win the game. Otherwise, we're going to throw this 25% possession at you. It's a Champions League final. You're a goal up and you're the best defensive team in the world. I mean, I get it. I absolutely get it. And it wasn't as though PSG were like bombs away. Like you're thinking this goal's coming, this goal's coming, this goal's coming. I thought, again, I text my friend, a desperate lunge, something, because that's the mental anxiety that any defensive team goes under, because PSG is going to stop pouring it on at some point. If it was 1-0 to Arsenal with 75 to go, they would have had Arsenal penned, believe you me. Arsenal wouldn't have had any kind of recourse to get up the pitch. Arsenal would have probably dropped deeper and deeper and thought 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And bad things can happen, a handball, a late lunge, all the rest of it. But look, I genuinely think if it's not for a penalty type situation, Arsenal could have seen that one out. Yes, it would have taken
Mm.
some more heroics, and maybe David Raya would have had to pull off an amazing save. But I genuinely felt they felt like, listen, we keep two banks of four. They're not going to create much against us. So let's just see where that game takes us. So I don't have an issue so much with the approach. I actually believe, and you might disagree, all throughout the season, Ayub, and I'll end on this, there's been a lot of talk about Arsenal. If they can just let go of the handbrake, they will be more of a forceful team. I don't believe that to be the case. I actually believe that for this type of team to win, where you're not littered with world-class offensive talent, I think the fact that it's underpinned by hard work, I think to win the league, you have to be that way, Ayub. The team that works the hardest normally wins the league. Again, unless you've got a generational type player or forward line where you can say they can cheat a little bit. You saw Mo Salah the season before. Liverpool were an incredible outfit. I thought they did incredibly well. It took an all-time season from Mo Salah probably to deliver that title. And they were still an incredibly hard-working team. Every single one of them. Yes, they dropped their standards this past season. But I actually believe the profile of player that Arsenal get must still have hard work and running as their core strength. Now, you get a flair player and stick him up top. Like Dembele, I love him. Top player. Ballon d'Or. I'm not going to listen if Arsenal landed. I'm not complaining. But you've just got to be careful about the profile of player. He's still got to be grafting hard. Mikel Arteta, everything he does in terms of his successes are underpinned by hard work. Champions League finals sound good to have a sprinkling of stardust. That you've got to get there, and you get there through hard graft. And that's why I'm saying it's not guaranteed that I will watch Arsenal play in a Champions League final in the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Before you know it, Arteta's left. So things can move very quickly, Ayub. It is not a guarantee, or stick a world-class striker in there, you win that game. You've got to get to the game. And the way you get to the game is being super hard to beat, which they were. I actually believe their best chance of winning the title next season is to be the exact same way they were this year. Work harder than everybody else, run harder than everybody else, and know that your confidence should take you through. Similarly in the Champions League, knockout football, in the good old days, it wasn't about going out there and just trying to score threes and fours and fives. Keep it tight, keep clean sheet, and know you've got world-class players on set pieces and certain on the edges of the game, on the margins around the game, that you can eke it out. And that's what they did. Atletico Madrid, 1-0 second leg. Sporting, something similar. Leverkusen, something similar. So yeah, I don't agree with those who believe that Arsenal should have opened it up. I saw enough to tell me that if they opened it up even 10, 15%, they would have got hammered. And the fact that they didn't buy the best attacking team in Europe, I think justifies that. In the end, he took it to where he needed to take it to. And then, like you said, it's a lottery. So yeah, from my side, no issues whatsoever. Could he have been a bit more proactive on the Mosquera? Because I saw it. I saw it straight away that I would be taking him off now. But maybe he just didn't feel comfortable to put Timber on. I think that's the only slight regret that he will have. I don't think the approach was the issue whatsoever. I think the game panned out exactly how he would have wanted it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's something that works for him, and he's done that. I mean, but it's one where it's not something you want a team that goes to win a game rather than not lose a game. And that's the approach that I think Arsenal have, that we're not going to lose this game. Whereas PSG, I think their mindset is right, we're going to go out and win this game. I mean, even from that unusual set play at the start, the kickoff, when they just hoof the ball up, that's purely for one reason, to try and get a free kick.
Yeah, but just on that, Ayub, just on that.
I mean, just on that, before you say, that would be, if that was Stoke under Pulis, if that was Bolton under Big Sam, it's the sort of thing that is often ridiculed and often criticised. Now that it's Arsenal doing it, is it okay? Is it creative? Is it inventive?
I'll just tell you very quickly. I fundamentally disagree with that. PSG were doing this wonderful thing against Bayern Munich, where Safinov was kicking the ball over Elise's head. He was kicking it straight off, by the way. I read a really detailed article on Friday night that was detailing all of what PSG do and all the rest of it. He was kicking it straight off over Elise's head. The justification being that to prevent Elise from playing in space, you create a throw-in on his side, which automatically attracts players towards Elise, which means he doesn't then have the space to create an open situation. Smart, if you ask me, to be honest with you. And you know whose arms will be hurting after Saturday night? Mikel Arteta. Do you know how many balls he caught from Safinov? Like, in the first half, Safinov, he's just kicking the ball over to him. Arteta's catching it left and right and all the rest of it. It was intentional from PSG, but we say, oh, it's PSG doing it. Did you not see how many times he kicked it straight off the pitch? That wasn't him just shanking it. That was him intentionally kicking it off to not allow Arsenal to then create in some sort of open situation. But because PSG do it, people just avoid it. And because Arsenal took a set piece from a kickoff, which, by the way, they've done a few times in the league as well, by the way, it's creating a situation that guarantees the ball to be in the final third or the defensive third of the opposition, and you get your striker to attack it. It's a bit of nuance. It's not systematic of long ball football, good old Wimbledon and all the rest of it. PSG do it, it's all cultured and all the rest of it. Arsenal do it, it's a sign of how defensive they are. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right. We'll leave it at that. And I'd be intrigued to find out what our viewers think of Arsenal's approach. Do you think it was right? Do you think it was effective? Or at least, I mean, you keep saying that you didn't lose the game. Now, technically, I suppose in the 120 minutes you didn't, but in penalties you did. Right. Let's sort of move on. There was
one last point on that. Let me ask you two quick questions. Do you think Arsenal would have taken penalties before the game?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think PSG would have taken penalties before the game?
No, I think they probably would have been expecting to win the game in normal time
Exactly. So,
because
so one team achieved their objective and one team didn't.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, and that's it. I've always been an advocate that ultimately it's about winning trophies. Now, if Arteta thought that was the best way that Arsenal had a chance, then I have no issue with that. But as I said, the problem then is if that's not effective, it is open to criticism, which is really what's happened. But we'll move on. There was
Yeah.
some other really exciting news, dramatic news. I mean, it was a bit of a surprise because I think for all the Liverpool journalists, they were very much that Slot is staying, much to, I suppose, the disagreement of a lot of the fans. But it seemed that it was a done deal that he was going to have another season at least. But there was quite dramatic news that Slot has been sent packing, which it's brought a great deal of euphoria amongst many of the Liverpool fans that I know, and I'm sure you know as well. And there is a name that's sort of prominent, and it's somebody obviously we've talked about quite often. But it's mixed reviews, though. I mean, I must confess, I
Yeah.
mean, it was some. I was expecting Liverpool fans to be sort of very pleased about Iriola, but apparently, I mean, it's not as unanimous in terms of fans sort of being on board with that decision. I think they're happy Slot's gone. I don't think I came across any Liverpool fan who wanted Slot to stay, but I think they are sort of quite concerned, or not quite concerned. There is a concern about the new probable incumbent. So, what's your thoughts initially on the news that Slot was, for all intents and purposes, sacked? And what's your thoughts on the potential incoming of Iriola?
Yeah, listen, Saturday afternoon, I mentioned earlier, I took the family for a lunch, which is when news broke of Arne Slot being let go. A good day to bury bad news. I did feel as though that if they were going to hand him a contract, which they had to do, they either had to fire him or give him a contract because no manager goes in to the final year of his deal without a contract extended. Otherwise, he's a lame duck, and players are not going to be able to, let's say, particularly believe in his message if ultimately the owners are not believing in the manager by rewarding him with a contract. That's how it works. So it was, um, it felt as though a bit of a moment where Liverpool were going to have to take a call. You're right, Ayub. In terms of the way the wind was blowing, it would appear that Arne Slot had ridden the storm and was going to be okay. I mean, there was talk about his former assistant from Viano joining as well. He couldn't join a year earlier. I think he had some issues getting a work permit, but it felt as though for the longest time, okay, if that's happening, then surely Slot stayed. There was no immediate news, obviously, after the season ended. So you're thinking, okay, fair enough. It looks like they're going to give him every chance. I mean, when the news broke, it would appear that Ayub, that the decision was made, I think, literally just an hour and a half before Arne Slot was told himself. Now, firstly, just very quickly, larger picture, Ayub. This is the first time in a long, long time, Ayub, that a manager has won the league, then hasn't kicked up a stink a la Mourinho in his second stint at Chelsea, Antonio Conte, just to name a few, where things just become untenable. Even Maresca at the end with Chelsea, yeah, he didn't win a title. But when things get untenable with the manager and the hierarchy, and there's some semblance of toxicity kind of, within the group, within the club, it ends one way, right? We know this. This was completely the opposite. He's won a title. He's well revered. I think in the statement they spoke about how it was with great reluctance. The players in the end, I guess led by Mo Salah, some of them were clearly not having him. You only need to read between the lines. So that felt a bit odd because that doesn't happen, does it? You won a title. That should give you enough equity. And then we spoke about throughout the season that he's handled himself with incredible grace. When Mo Salah spoke about, gave that interview famously after the Ellen Road debacle when Leeds equalised in the last minute, much to your delight, 3-3. He gave that famous interview where he said, he's kind of thrown me under the bus and what have you. Honestly, we gave him massive credit because he could have poured oil onto that fire, but he pretty much doused it and he settled things down and he didn't give any more kind of credence to the story and tried to kill it in its impetus and what have you. And then he's had to bat away another few criticism and critical moments where there's been question marks asked of him, and he's never thrown any of his players under the bus, and he's spoken fairly well. He was asked about Mo Salah the other day as well, and he's bowed him away, not just with good grace, but a smile and a little bit of humour here and there, which is the approach to take. I think in terms of negating controversy, I think it was a masterclass in a lot of fires that he was being asked to comment on, and he put them out. And I think that's why it's so surprising in some ways. Now, do I think that he was the right man for Liverpool Football Club moving forward? I have massive question marks because I think he had so many issues to now address in this summer period alone that I couldn't believe that he was going to hit on every single one of them. And how they were going to land a new contract for him with the fans was going to be a difficult one to land at you just because of how that season ended. And also when one of the club's legends and he's leaving and all the rest of it takes pot shots at you on his way out, that he's going to bring some fans with him, isn't he, Ayub? And that's the way it goes at some of these iconic football clubs. Listen, I think he handled himself with incredible grace. I've got a lot of time for him. I saw his comments yesterday, I think, and today in terms of speaking about the sadness at what happened at the parade last year when you had that incident with the car. I forgot the gentleman's name, but it was obviously sentenced for 21 years. But I think there were a few people, I think, that lost their lives and many injured and all the rest of it. I think got 21 years in prison. He spoke about the outpouring of love and passion in terms of the support after Diogo Jota's tragic passing and the Liverpool fans and the faithful. And his statement was full of class. I mean, if you read it in its entirety, he speaks about how Liverpool are back where they belong, the relationship with the fans, even though he lost many of the fans. He spoke about how he will cherish forever and all the rest of it. So there were no parting shots or any kind of passive aggressive statements. He could have felt pretty aggrieved. I mean, he's delivered a title. It does not happen. Liverpool do not sack managers. That's the first thing, unless it's the very, very, very last step. And it definitely don't sack managers a year after they've delivered a title. I mean, that should give you a lot of grace and a lot of runway. I could not imagine a scenario where Mikel Arteta is fired in 12 months' time. And it's something, I don't know what would have to happen for that to occur. So look, just in terms of larger picture, I do think it's maybe the right time because I think the direction was troublesome. And I think there's a huge job there, actually, in terms of the transition. You talk about Salah leaving, Van Dijk probably his last season coming up, Ayub. Alisson probably his last season. Canard has confirmed that he's leaving. So there's a job on there, Ayub. He's probably going to have to move on from another few players as well, bring in a lot of players. Now, just very quickly before I turn it over to you about Iraola, it would appear that Iraola is the leading frontrunner, Ayub. You spoke about him glowingly. You were desperate for Leeds to land him not long ago when he stood pat, if you remember, and then committed to Bournemouth. I think at the end of that season, I think you were desperately trying to prize him away mid-season and what have you. If it is Iraola, I mean, it'd be magical. Him, Arteta and Alonso are incredibly good friends, all from the same part of town in that kind of Basque area. For them to be managing Chelsea, Arsenal and Liverpool is a magical story in and of itself. It goes to show that the hierarchy does not rate Xabi Alonso at all because he was available. Now you might argue, well, they weren't sure if they were going to move on from Slaw and Alonso probably had to commit. I get that, but you don't let a good manager that you rate, let's say, commit to something if you can't just let him commit just because you're not willing to take a decision. Now it would appear, if you ask me what happened with this one is, I think they did have a formal review. I think Iraola was probably getting close to committing to something. There were some rumours about Leverkusen, AC Milan, all the rest of it. So his people have said, listen, he's pretty close now. So it's now or never. If you're interested, it needs to be now. There is a little bit of talk about how it broke on the same day PSG were playing. Could it be that Enrique now with back-to-back Champions League titles could be like, listen, I've achieved everything I want to achieve. Yeah, a three-peat would be wonderful, and that puts you in rarefied air in terms of, three on the bounce. That's incredible. That would be incredible. But maybe he's thinking this is a good time. He really has a good penchant for Liverpool in terms of an affinity for that club. It feels like a fit for me as well. They got Champions League, which I think is important because that's a manager who'd want to deliver a Champions League at his next football club, whenever that is. I think he's coming to the Premier League at some point. So why not now when there's an opening at one of the biggest clubs in Europe? That could still be something just to keep an eye on over the next 24, 48 hours. For me, Enrique is your first choice, second choice, third choice. It's as simple as that. You do what you need to do. And there's managers you move on from just to bring
Mm.
Luis Enrique to your football club. I would imagine United sounded him out at some point during the whole discussions with Michael Carrick. If it's not Luis Enrique, for me, I'd still have a look at Klopp. I think the reason why they didn't go for Alonso, I just want to get your thoughts, Ayub, I'm not sure the Liverpool hierarchy, Michael Edwards, Richard Hughes, maybe even FSG, I don't think they felt as comfortable handing the club back into a fan's favourite. I think that's one of the reasons why perhaps they've not looked at Klopp again. Xabi Alonso is as though you're handing the club back. I mean, he'd have the fans' putty in his hands. And I think maybe they want to still keep some semblance of control where Iraola would still be their guy. So they could at least kind of keep him, I want to say under control, but there's some element of distance there with the fans. I think that's one of the reasons why they did go for Alonso. But yeah, listen, in the end, if it is Iraola, I think he's earned the chance. That's what I would say. You never know how things are going to work. Jamie Redknapp spoke very eloquently about what he's been doing at Bournemouth. He was saying about how if you're part of the squad, he's communicating with you. If you're not in his squad, he's not communicating with you as much. How would he deal with the game every 3 days, 4 days? It's a lot more games than you're going to be playing at Bournemouth. But the one thing Bournemouth do is they run. And Liverpool fans want to see their team run and fight and all the rest of it. So stylistically, I think it's a fit. I think he's a good young manager who's maybe ready for the big time. This would be that type of opportunity. But I would still say if there's even an inkling of a chance to prize Luis Enrique away from PSG, you move heaven and earth to make it happen. But it looks like Iraola's maybe got the gig.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about Enrique. I mean, I think he's the hottest coach in the world at this moment in time. I think he would be a perfect fit because I think the one thing that I think Enrique would bring is that he would understand Liverpool, the city. I always say that about Liverpool Football Club. It's not just the football club; it's a city as well. There's an identity that Liverpool has, and I think that's one of the criticisms for Slot. I don't think he ever got what Liverpool is all about. Iriola, if this was 6 months ago, it probably would have been somebody that I would say, yeah, absolutely. But what I think about is what I was saying about Frank. I thought Frank was a perfect fit for Spurs. It never just worked out. And with Frank, we've got a coach who's got significant experience for the Premier League. He had a great reputation with Brentford. Now it's very similar to Bournemouth. These are sort of small clubs with small fan bases, and they've been sort of punching above their weight for a number of years. So I'm not sure. I think he has the credentials. But I'm just hoping it's not going to be a similar story to what happened with Thomas Frank, because I for whatever reason I still not quite worked out what the reason was, but it just seemed to be a step too far for Thomas Frank. Liverpool have got huge expectation, and you talked about obviously the expectations are huge. The demands are going to be huge as well. I mean, he Iriola does work his players very, very hard, but he has to understand that when you're in multiple competitions, you've got to keep a certain freshness about your team. He's not managed a big club. Now, I suppose at some stage, every manager hasn't managed a big club until they manage a big club. So he's in that position where he's going to obviously have lots of challenges. Alonso would have been my choice because he gets Liverpool. He has an understanding what Liverpool is all about. He's managed big clubs, so he knows what it's about and what the expectations are, what the pressures are. So it's. I'm glad Slot's gone though. I think Slot had to go. I think whatever eloquence he had when he's obviously talked about sort of various things that have happened at the club, the way he's dealt with things. I think ultimately, from a footballing perspective, he had to go. I think he'd lost the dressing room. Players certainly did not sort of rate him or respect him, and it's untenable. You cannot have a coach of a club of the magnitude of Liverpool and not have the players on board, because it probably would be worse next season if it had stayed. So I think it was the right choice. It's just a case of getting the right man in. I think Luis Enrique would be just magnificent. I think for him to come to the Premier League, and you're right. I mean, the fact that PSG have won makes it perhaps more possible for him to come.
Yeah.
But I don't know how far the conversation, because by all accounts, official conversations have started taking place with Iriola. Whether they're going to sound out Enrique, I'm not too sure, but that will be just unbelievable if we were to get Enrique sort of managing in the Premier League. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very quickly on Honest you, the reason why I think you and I probably both agree that irrespective of the personal kind of fondness and what have you, and he dealt with a lot of dignity and what have you, is that he moved Liverpool away from being a kind of a blood and thunder type football team, kind of up and down and all the rest of it, to a more Dutch-like, very kind of continental football, cautious and all the rest of it. So as the football was moving away towards a more kind of power game, so to speak, power, athleticism, set pieces and all the rest of it, he was moving Liverpool to a more cultured continental type football, kind of slow and what have you. And it's just not going to work. And you mentioned it right there, that did he get Liverpool? Now, the first season, I thought he had his imprints all over that title. I think he used the players he had. Salah had an incredible season, but I thought he made some serious in-game adjustments to many a game. I still remember home to Brighton.
Yeah.
They were getting played off the park, second half. They won 2-1 because he made some critical adjustments for that second half. I still remember watching that game. But that was the worry for Liverpool fans, that how can you not see where the league's heading? And how can every single football player, I mean, there was talk about too many days being given off. They were getting outrun by everybody. They even got outrun by Chelsea at Anfield, and Chelsea are also another team that gets outrun by a lot of teams. And running is one of those statistics that it doesn't lie. I mean, you either run a lot or you don't run a lot. And Liverpool just became a team that looked lethargic. I mean, there were games where I'd watch the middle of the park giving no options. Gravenberch, McAllister, who had a shocking season, they're not giving any options whatsoever to their players. The players start to play in silos, in isolation, no combination play, no structures, no team structure. There's Arsenal defending as though their absolute lives depend on it, and Liverpool just having a bit of a free-for-all for most of the season. And that's maybe the difference between the two teams. So I think that's the worry. How can a manager not see where the season's headed and not adjust and adapt? Now, yes, some of his players obviously struggle, and in some ways you kind of live by the sword, die by the sword, don't you? Mo Salah delivers that title for him in that first season through his absolute brilliance, world class, one of the greatest Premier League seasons ever, and no doubt Arne Slot also had a big imprint, and some of the other players I thought played really well. But then it's probably Mo Salah's kind of decline in the second season, as well as some of the off the field stuff that's maybe brought about Arne Slot's demise as well. It's kind of, this is what you get, unfortunately. You win some and you lose some. Just very quickly on Enrique, though, for me, the thing about what makes Enrique special for Liverpool is, you're right, it's a wonderful fit. He used to manage Barcelona. I've always felt Barcelona and Liverpool share certain traditions. Now, Liverpool, in terms of they've had their history, obviously, in terms of some tragic moments, not least Jota and what happened last year at the parade, and then Hillsborough going further afield and what have you. Luis Enrique, we've spoken about it, has had personal tragedy and what have you as well. So there's I'm not going to say there's any kind of comparison, but there's, it's a club and a city that kind of would warm to him. Because I think when you hear the PSG players speak about him, they don't speak much about him as a coach. They tell you first and foremost he's an incredible human being, and I think that's the first thing that resonates. Aura. That's what you think about when you think Luis Enrique, and I think that's what Liverpool are fighting for. If you land him, you're guaranteed to win a Premier League title, in my opinion. You can book that. Champions League can always be a little bit difficult because of the reasons I mentioned earlier about Arsenal. I think that's just, it can get a little dicey, knockout games, funny things can happen. But given the size of the job ahead for Liverpool right now, Ayub, and I can whisk off 15 different issues that they've got to dissolve probably in this summer and in January, just in terms of contract extensions, personnel decisions, Kanate obviously now leaving as well, and all the rest of it. You're going to need a very calm and a very kind of world-class hand at the steer, so to speak, just to navigate through those challenges. Giving it to a young buck, and I say that affectionately, to Iriola could be too much, because it is a different beast altogether at Liverpool. You lose a couple of games on the bounce, the fans will let you hear about it. The nervousness around the Kop and Anfield will be very palpable. I think when Enrique comes in, you put up with it because you think, hey, this guy's world class. He'll deliver something in the long run, the same way Klopp did. And also, he would hold FSG accountable as well. Now, I'm not sure if FSG are willing to go down that road, because sometimes they do shy away from managers that you might not be able to control as much. Again, if Enrique comes to Liverpool, Ayub, You're handing over the entire club to Luis Enrique. What he says goes. Nobody's going to have any patience for any kind of rejection of any of his ideas. You literally have to hand the entire club over to him, like PSG have done, and you see the fruits of that come, obviously, in back-to-back Champions Leagues. If they can land him, it's an incredible story. To let Pep Guardiola, who's obviously now left, leaves a bit of a vacuum in terms of coaches and auras and all the rest of it. To land Luis Enrique would be the most incredible story, and would probably get Liverpool in amongst fighting for the title sooner rather than later. I think it's going to be Raiola, but Enrique would be the most maddening story ever.
Absolutely. And I think that's a fitting way to end the show. So as always, thank you always for your time. Even though it's been a little bit emotional, but hopefully it has been a cathartic experience. You've been able to get it off your chest. And to the viewers, it's always a pleasure to have you. And until the next time, take it easy. We'll see you soon. Ta-ra now.